Good afternoon, I'm Katie Wilson and you're watching A News. Let's see your headlines. President Trump threatens further military action against Iran's nuclear facilities. President Zelensky says a ceasefire and freeing prisoners are top priorities as peace talks begin. And Turkey opens the door to one of the world's largest defence exhibitions. The war of words between Washington and Tehran is heating up. US President Donald Trump has issued a stark warning after Iran admitted 3 of its nuclear sites were severely damaged in US strikes last month. Iran says it won't abandon its nuclear enrichment program, calling it a matter of national pride.
I thought it was great, but then I did something.
US President Donald Trump has threatened further military action against Iran's nuclear facilities, just weeks after American jets struck 3 sites during Israel's conflict with Tehran. On his Truth Social account, Trump posted, "Of course the damages in Iran are severe," he said, "and we will do it again if necessary." That message came in direct response to Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, who told Fox News on Monday that Iran's enrichment program had suffered serious setbacks but would not be abandoned.
Damages are serious and severe, but obviously we cannot give up our enrichment because it is an achievement of our own scientists, and now more than that, it is a question of national pride.
The US airstrikes on Iran in June hit Fordow, Natanz and Isfahan, their key facilities in Iran's nuclear network. Though Trump had claimed that they were completely obliterated, US intelligence later assessed the program had only been delayed by a few months, a report that the White House called flat out wrong. Meanwhile, Iran says it's preparing for new nuclear talks with European nations in Istanbul this Friday, the first since the Israel and Iran ceasefire last month. The talks will focus on sanctions relief and Iran's nuclear commitments, coming amid the fallout of last month's US airstrikes. Tehran maintains its program is peaceful, but with threats of further military action, the diplomatic path looks increasingly fragile.
Well, A News' Andy Mioch discussed the latest surrounding Iran's nuclear program and the upcoming talks with European countries. He spoke to nuclear energy expert Bruno Goncalves on the political weight of Beijing's connection.
In the frame of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action that was signed, UK, Germany and France, and in face of this view or these declarations from Iran, they may bring a snapback mechanism which will bring heavy sanctions back into Iran. So these negotiations are crucial for Iran to keep negotiating on the oil market and to have access also to the financial market. So the results are quite important for Iran. So it will be a very complicated negotiation because there's no reason to have a program for high-enriched uranium, a civil program for high-enriched uranium. And of course, the partners and all the partners and signatories are not willing to accept this view from Iran. So China is already a very important market for Iran because after the sanctions from the United States in 2018, China became a very important partner for oil transactions into 2020. By the end of 2022, 1.1 to 1.2 million of barrels per day of oil was traded with China. So in China and Russia, Iran may find the allies that it requires to keep up in the market and to try to compensate the sanctions that may be imposed by the other partners. But of course, this snapback mechanism will be proposed to the UN Security Council and should be accepted by the 15 members of the UN Security Council. So it will be very complicated talks, but China and Russia are by far important partners to allow Iran to continue on the markets.
2 explosions were reported in Gaza on Wednesday morning, with thick black smoke rising for hours. The blasts highlight the ongoing instability that continues to block critical aid access. More than 100 aid organisations have warned that hunger is spreading rapidly across the Strip, with even aid workers facing severe shortages. Essential supplies like food, water and medicine remain largely inaccessible for the residents of the Gaza Strip. Israel denies responsibility for the crisis. Well, Israeli operations in central Gaza have intensified, with renewed fighting in Deir al-Balah and mounting concerns over civilian safety and hostages. As regional mediators push for a breakthrough, hopes for a lasting ceasefire remain uncertain. Joining us now is Tom Gross, a political analyst from Tel Aviv in Israel. Thank you for being with us, Tom. Now, how significant is the Israeli operation in Deir al-Balah at this stage of the conflict?
Well, the Israeli chief of staff of the army has said that Israel is now in its most complicated war ever. It's been going on more than 650 days. And this is a region, Deir al-Balah, which has remained largely untouched until now. And that's because it's incredibly built-up area, a labyrinth of streets and buildings and so on, and it's very, very difficult to operate in. And it is really one of Hamas's last remaining bastions of power and strength. It's also believed that hostages may be held underneath the area in tunnels there. So although Israel is fighting from the air, it's also fighting on the ground in quite intense battles. Almost every day, Israeli soldiers are being killed by Hamas. So Hamas are not yet defeated.
And how is the humanitarian situation in Gaza influencing these international diplomatic efforts for a ceasefire?
Well, there are two different things going on. One is the international efforts largely led by the United States through Qatar. Qatar, to remind people, is the headquarters of the Hamas leadership. And
but hang on, but Tom,
yes.
Qatar did help broker the release of 4 Israeli hostages, and they are arguably best positioned to influence Hamas.
I'm about to explain that. The reason that the United States and Israel speak to Qatar is the only government that can help deliver Hamas. They are its main funders, together with Iran, and they house the Hamas leadership. The Hamas leadership lives in Qatar under the protection of the Qatari government. But Qatar also hosts a US military base and also enjoys warm relations with countries like Britain and France. So Qatar have positioned themselves as intermediaries. But what I wanted to say is that these two different phenomena. One is the negotiations going on in Qatar involving America, Israel, also Egypt, and Hamas. Secondly is the criticism of Israel by many Western and other governments for the humanitarian situation in Gaza, a criticism which Israel not only rejects, says is based on propaganda, but also says plays into Hamas's hands by making it seem like Israel is denying food and supplies, whereas in fact, the IDF, the Israeli army, has now released many videos and still photos of a lot of aid going into Gaza, and Israel says it's not being distributed properly because Hamas are interfering with it in collaboration, and this is the more serious charge, with various United Nations officials and other groups who Israel say are in effect working hand in hand with Hamas to preserve Hamas rule in Gaza, because any long-term ceasefire would likely see Hamas having to give up power.
Do you think there's an urgency in pushing for a ceasefire given this humanitarian situation?
Absolutely. I mean, the humanitarian situation is terrible for many, the majority of Gazans, even if it's somewhat exaggerated by Hamas propagandists, the figures and so on. There's undeniably fantastic suffering for the civilian population in Gaza, and therefore a ceasefire is crucial. However, the ceasefire that would allow Hamas to rearm, as they did in the previous ceasefire, and therefore then prolong the war, once the ceasefire has broken down, because of course a ceasefire is not an end of conflict, it's literally a ceasing of firing. So what we don't want is a ceasefire that will, allow Hamas to rearm and prolong a war that they can't ultimately win because they're vastly outnumbered and outgunned by Israel, but they can keep it going if various collaborative agencies, including some through the UN, not the UN leadership, but UN staff on the ground. Many of them are co-opted into working with Hamas for various reasons that I could explain, if you like, another time. And that will simply prolong the war. There may be a short ceasefire, but we want a long-term end to the war. And in my view, the time to pressure Israel is not now. It's once Hamas give up power, then the international community should pressure Israel into ensuring that a better Gaza is built for the Palestinian residents of Gaza, one that will, prosper, live in peace, and self-govern. But the time to stop, the time to pressure Israel now simply plays into Hamas's hands and does the opposite. It then prolongs the war.
Thank you very much for your insights and for joining us on the programme.
Thank you.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says achieving a ceasefire and freeing prisoners are top priorities as fresh peace talks with Russia are set to begin in Turkey today. It's the first high-level negotiations for nearly 2 months. Zelensky stressed efforts by Ukraine and its partners to organise a leaders' peace summit and secure the return of civilians and children held by Moscow. Despite 2 previous rounds of talks in Istanbul, no breakthrough has been reached in ending the war.
A meeting was held with our negotiating team. Rustem Umerov will lead the delegation at the next meeting with the Russian side. We agreed on the meeting's agenda and identified the key topics for Ukraine. The release of our people from Russian captivity must continue, and necessary procedures for a new exchange have already begun. We expect our people back tomorrow. I very much hope it will be successful.
The United Nations Security Council is urging greater efforts for global peace. The UN body has adopted a resolution to strengthen peaceful dispute mechanisms and urges member states to make full use of the tools listed in Article 33 of the UN Charter.
The United Nations Security Council has unanimously adopted a resolution aimed at strengthening mechanisms for the peaceful settlement of disputes. The resolution urges all UN member states to make full use of the tools outlined in Article 33 of the UN Charter, including negotiation, inquiry, mediation, arbitration, and judicial settlement. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres called on member states to reaffirm their commitment to multilateralism and the peaceful resolution of conflicts through diplomacy, while upholding international law and the principles of the UN Charter to promote global peace and security.
Around the world, we see an utter disregard for, if not outright violation of, international law, including international human rights law, international refugee law, international humanitarian law, and the UN Charter itself, without any accountability. These failures to uphold international obligations are coming at a time of a widening geopolitical divides and conflicts. And the cost is staggering, measured in human lives, shattered communities, and lost futures. We need look no further than the horror show in Gaza, with a level of death and destruction without parallel in recent times.
Guterres also highlighted that peace requires deliberate choice and sustained effort, with the UN Security Council playing a central role in the global framework for peace and security.
The Trump administration is withdrawing from the United Nations Cultural Agency, UNESCO. It's the second time President Trump has pulled out of the organisation, and this time it takes effect at the end of 2026. Nick Harper sent this report from Washington.
Another term in office, another chance to withdraw the US from UNESCO. Donald Trump, during his first term in the White House, decided to pull the US out of the UN's cultural organization. His successor, Joe Biden, rejoined the organization, only for Donald Trump to now announce it's time to pull the US out once again. We're told that this will take effect at the end of next year. The State Department's spokesperson, Tammy Bruce, put out the announcement saying continued involvement in UNESCO is not in the national interest of the United States. Remember, Donald Trump is all about America first, not about multilateralism, which is something that this UN organization very much represents. Tammy Bruce going on to say that the UNESCO organization has an outsized focus on a globalist ideological agenda for international development. And she said quite clearly that was at odds with the US's America First foreign policy. The US does dislike international organizations under Donald Trump. He is not keen on that idea of working with other countries in a multilateral format. He has already withdrawn the United States out of the WHO, the World Health Organization, and also the UN's Human Rights Council. UNESCO has put out a statement saying, however regrettable, this announcement was anticipated. And UNESCO, it said, was prepared for it. They also say that the financial impact of the US decision will be limited. The US only funds the overall budget by about 8%. And we're told that UNESCO has already diversified in recent years, finding other financial sources. And remember, in the past, the US has accused the United Nations and UNESCO in particular of anti-Israel bias. UNESCO, for example, back in 2011, allowed Palestine to become a full member of UNESCO. Tammy Bruce from the State Department also citing that growing anti-Israel rhetoric within the organisation was part of this US decision to withdraw once again. Nick Harper for A News in Washington, D.C.
Well, President Trump has announced what he calls a historic trade deal with Japan, lowering tariffs and pledging major Japanese investment in America. But with limited details and mixed industry reaction, questions remain over the true scope of the agreement.
I presented to you on
President Donald Trump has claimed a victory on what he's calling the largest trade deal in history with Japan. The agreement cuts tariffs on Japanese goods from 25% to 15% and brings a massive investment pledge from Tokyo worth $550 billion. However, many of the deal's details remain unclear.
But I just signed the largest trade deal in history, I think maybe the largest deal in history with Japan. And that was done with Japan. They had their top people here, and we worked on it long and hard, and it's a great deal for everybody. I always say it has to be great for everybody. It's a great deal. A lot different from the deals in the past, I can tell you that. But we're doing really well as a country. We're strong.
Trump also says the US will have greater access to Japanese markets for American goods, including cars, trucks, and agricultural products. Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba says the deal also boosts energy cooperation between the two allies.
We also confirmed that we will cooperate to strengthen energy security between the two countries, including increasing exports of the United States, liquefied natural gas to Japan in a mutually beneficial manner.
While Trump touted the deal on Truth Social, both the White House and Japan's foreign ministry have yet to provide full details. And with the 1st of August tax hike deadline looming, industries are still wondering what the deal really means.
Well, Japanese stocks have surged due to renewed trade optimism. It's after the country struck a trade deal with the United States, which lowers tariffs on its autos.
In Tokyo, relief and celebrations as commuters grabbed special editions of a local newspaper. The front page announcing a cut in US auto tariffs to 15%, down from the threatened 25%.
At first they said it'd be a 25% tariff rate, so perhaps Japan has gotten through this.
Japanese stocks soared with the Nikkei hitting a one-year high. automakers led the charge. Mazda surged 18%, Toyota jumped 14%.
I invest in stocks. I'm holding Toyota and Honda amongst others, so I'm very happy.
For Japan's economy, the reduced tariffs may ease inflation fears and give the central bank room to act. And the momentum spilled into Wall Street. S&P 500 futures were up 0.2%, while Nasdaq futures added 0.1%. President Donald Trump also said representatives from the European Union would be in Washington for trade negotiations on Wednesday. Following this news, European shares followed suit. The Euro Stoxx 600 rose 1%, while UK stocks hit record highs. And with US-China talks scheduled in Stockholm next week to discuss an extension to their 12th of August deadline, the markets will no doubt hold their breath for what's next.
Minval Politica news outlet published information identifying the officer who allegedly gave the order to shoot down the Azerbaijan Airlines passenger plane. According to the report, Major General Alexander Tolopilo ordered the downing of the plane. Lieutenant Colonel Nikolai Olyansky then passed the command to Captain D.S. Paladichuk. An anonymous letter sent to Minval Politica reportedly confirms Paladichuk's crew was under Tolopilo's command during the December 2024 crash. It alleges Tolopilo avoided responsibility by blaming Rostov air traffic personnel and falsely claiming missiles self-destructed, a claim denied by an internal investigation. Despite this, Tolopilo was promoted. Russian authorities have not commented on the claims. Well, Kazakhstan plans to boost oil export through the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan route by an additional 100,000 tonnes this year. It's part of a broader effort to strengthen regional ties in energy, logistics and trade. Our Central Asia correspondent Fariza Kalamirzana has more.
Kazakhstan is set to increase oil shipments through the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline by an additional 100,000 tonnes this year. The decision was announced following talks between Kazakhstan's Minister of Energy Yerlan Akkenjenov and Georgia's Minister of Economy and Sustainable Development Maryam Kverishvili. Akkenjenov highlighted Georgia's role as a key transit hub, saying it plays a vital part in Kazakhstan's efforts to diversify its oil export routes. He noted that 1.4 million tons of Kazakh oil moved through the pipeline last year, and that figure is set to rise to 1.5 million tons this year. He also pointed to Georgia's transport infrastructure as a strong and stable part of the supply chain. The ministers reviewed the current operations and development prospects of Kazakhstan's key assets in Georgia, including the Batumi seaport and Batumi oil terminal, which play a crucial role in regional logistics. They also discussed opportunities in green energy. The focus was on aligning Kazakhstan's Trans-Caspian energy corridor, developed with Azerbaijan and Uzbekistan, with Georgia's Black Sea power cable project. Both sides expressed interest in creating a unified energy route linking Central Asia and Europe. In a separate meeting, Georgian minister also met with Kazakhstan's Prime Minister Olzhas Bektenov. Their talks centered on expanding transport and logistics cooperation, especially through the Trans-Caspian international transport route and boosting trade in agriculture. Kazakhstan proposed increasing exports of grain, dairy, meat and confectionery products to Georgia. In this context, the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan pipeline is a major export route for Caspian oil. It stretches 1,768 kilometers through Azerbaijan, Georgia and Turkey, and has a daily capacity of up to 1.2 million barrels. Fariza Kalamirzana, A News, Almaty, Kazakhstan.
Iran and Russia have launched the Kazareks 2025 joint naval exercise in the Caspian Sea, which aims to demonstrate its continued military cooperation. However, some analysts say the exercise is more symbolic, highlighting Russia's effort to maintain influence in the region. They added, securing the Caspian Sea is crucial for Iran's push to establish new trade corridors with Central Asia and Pakistan. The exercise involves search and rescue drills and includes observers from other Caspian coastal nations. Well, joining us to unpack this is energy and economic analyst Osama Rizvi. Thank you for being with us. Now, what does this drill tell us about the current state of the Moscow-Tehran partnership?
Well, thank you so much for having me today. I believe that this drill carries a message that is more than the symbolism. We see that both countries have been cooperating on the economic front, on the energy front, way before this drill. And even as far as latest as this year, 20th of January, they signed a strategic framework. If you look at the trade between both the countries, it has gone up by 16%. Even non-oil trade has gone up 14% year-on-year basis. So I think it's a message. It's a sign to the world that this Eastern Bloc, the Eastern Hemisphere, and the countries within, they intend to play a very important role in the global trade and diplomatic landscape moving forward.
Now, this exercise comes after Russia didn't lend meaningful assistance to Iran during the 12-day war. So can we really say that this drill is more than symbolic?
Well, that is a very interesting question. You see, during the 12-day war, no country actually extended a very categorical or blatant support to Iran, and even on the Israeli side, that was only the US. So because diplomatic matters are very sensitive, there were still some signs. For instance, when Putin was asked the same question, he said that we have not asked our people to move out of the country. That is a support as well. And when there were doubts or rumors about killing Ayatollah Khamenei, the Russian spokesman said that would be a very, very concerning development which Russia would take very seriously. So such innuendos or such hints were there, but of course direct or blatant support either from Russia or China would be difficult in such circumstances.
Now, what are the implications of this for Azerbaijan, which has long been at odds with Iran over issues concerning the Caspian Sea?
Well, for Azerbaijan, some in the policy corridors might view it as the encirclement, because Azerbaijan has long-standing issues with Iran on some ends. But the recent developments in the country has been as such that Azerbaijan has secured its position in the Central Asian region, and I believe through diplomacy and through its connections with its neighboring countries, hopefully all of these countries can sit on table together and resolve all of their issues so that this region as a whole can grow in a positive manner.
Thank you very much for your insights and for joining us on the programme.
Thank you.
Turkey opened the doors to one of the world's largest defence exhibitions, hosting military and cutting-edge technologies and attracting international defence leaders from over 30 countries.
The 17th edition of the International Defence Industry Fair has opened in Istanbul, showcasing cutting-edge military technologies and drawing global attention from defence leaders and manufacturers. Held at the Istanbul Expo Centre, the event is organised under the auspices of the Turkish Ministry of National Defence and supported by the Presidency of Defence Industries. IDEF 2025 brings together top-level defence officials, including ministers, deputy ministers, chiefs of general staff and military commanders from 33 countries. More than 400 international companies from 44 countries are exhibiting the latest in defence technology. The fair features specialised sections for land, air and naval systems. On display are main battle tanks, armoured vehicles, missiles, air defence systems, UAVs, aircraft engines, satellite technologies and naval platforms including combat ships, unmanned surface and underwater vehicles, and advanced command and control systems. The event runs through July 27th, with the final 2 days open to the general public.
Well, our reporter Nuray Mustafa was at the Defence exhibition in Istanbul.
Reporting from Istanbul, the 17th International Defence Industry Fair, IDF 2025, has officially commenced. This week, Turkey stands at the center of global attention. The world's leading defence companies, government delegations and military officials have gathered at the Istanbul Expo Center. First launched in 1993, IDF has become one of the most prestigious events in the defence industry. This year, over the 1,200 companies from more than 50 countries are participating. In addition to hosting the fair, Turkey is also showcasing its transformation from a regional power into a global defense player. Leading firms such as Baykar, Aselsan, TUSAŞ and Roketsan are unveiling their latest innovations, from unmanned aerial vehicles to AI-powered combat systems. IDF is not just a weapon exhibition, it also serves as a hub for defense diplomacy. NATO allies, along with representatives from the Middle East, Africa and Central Asia, are holding bilateral meetings and are discussing avenues for cooperation. This year, the exhibition space has expanded to include both the Istanbul Expo Center and Atatürk Airport, allowing for more displays and interactive activities. One of the standout additions is the Defenders of Tomorrow Zone, DOT, where university projects and startups are showcasing creative ideas that shape the future of industry. Panels and seminars are ongoing, where experts are discussing the sector's key challenges. Traditional ship visits have been organized closer to the exhibition area the year, offering direct access to naval technologies. IDF 2025, where technology, diplomacy and innovation converge, will run until 27 July.
At the event, A News got an exclusive interview with Selçuk Bayraktar, the chairman of Baykar Technologies. The company is widely known for its unmanned aerial vehicles. This is what Bayraktar had to say on the evolving defence partnership between Turkey and Azerbaijan and the domestic development of defence technologies.
I think the Turkish states are reviving their defence establishment and making a big mark in history in the defense world. Turkey has made a significant advancement in the last 20 years, especially in the field of unmanned systems. Right now, Baykar is the leading exporter and the producer of big-sized drones. TB2 Bayraktar, TB2 Bayraktar, TB3 Akıncı and Kızıl Elma. And Baykar has become the largest producer of big drones in the world now, and also along with that, the family of munitions and the payload systems are all being developed and produced indigenously in Turkey. Similarly, what we see in Azerbaijan is a similar trend is growing in Azerbaijan as well. The new age of defense technology is being developed by Azerbaijani engineers. We have established Bayraktar Technology Azerbaijan a couple of years back, and the team there is a world-class team, highly educated Azerbaijani engineers, young folks, and so inshallah they're going to make a big mark for the freedom of Azerbaijan, for the defense of Azerbaijan and the independence of Azerbaijan, and for the Turkish states. And we hope and pray that they will play a significant role in making the world a much safer place.
Last year presented the Akıncı drone to the President Ilham Aliyev. What are the next steps specifically for the Baykar Technology Azerbaijan?
So they are developing, our fellows there, fellow engineers are developing indigenous systems specifically made in Azerbaijan and designed in Azerbaijan, and will hopefully release the details once they're ready to be released to the public. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That's all we have for now. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.